testing. I am not an artist. But when I was thinking about doing a presentation, I'm always so busy at doing other things, I always think, okay, I'd like to do it on object-oriented and how different techniques are used. And I was thinking, how can I do object-oriented programming as simple as I learned C, way back before most of you guys even knew what a computer was, if you were even born. About me, I'm an old BSD Unix geek. My mom got me in at NDSU at 16 years old. I was taking computer science classes with all the juniors, and I was kicking everybody's ass. Started coding when I was 12. I'm 60 now. I'm full of ideas. I've always been very automation-minded. Every time I look at something, it was always Perl. Oh, you could do that automatically like this. And then as CPUs and stuff got to be bigger and bigger, there'd be more, there's more code needed. And I went and found, when I was looking for, when I switched from Perl to Python, there was a CVE. Oh, this part's coming up later too. So I figured out this was a CVE. That's what's great about these large language models. You can go in there and hunt. So in 2009, there was a CVE in the HTTP protocol. And I went and looked in there. So that would have been April. I would have been busy bicycling and stuff. And then in that fall, I went and looked, is there a unit test for that CVE in the code base? And there wasn't. So then it's like, oh, see ya. And in Python, there was already a test for that CVE in the code base. So it's like, stop using something that isn't even supported 6 months after a well-known vulnerability is presented. So, okay, yeah, that's where I switched from Perl to Python. And now I'm at Cisco Systems, which everything's automated. We're writing code to do everything. There isn't anything that, if you manually do it 1 or 2 times, that's fine. The third time, fourth, fifth, it better all be coded. And there's lots of these projects where there's routers that are being deployed, and they're always in a pattern. They're like 3 routers, and one has one aspect, and then all there is different names and different IP addresses. So it is all automation. So it fits into my whole life of just coding everything. And I love volunteering at the Botanical Garden because the plants do all the work. And here, doing a Python user group, Python's going to do all the work. And you got the QR code here, and the code, and that'll be at the end too. So I wanted to say, how can you do object-oriented programming just like Ken Thompson did? And I brought my old computer books. The one with the white, the yellow. That's page 7 right here in photos. Nope. In this one. Yep, page 7. So the top of this is what I was like, how do you do something as simple as that? Because that literally prints out Hello World. And they start out the book, this is how you print out Hello World. And Ken Thompson was so cool to think of, how do you do this as simple as possible? How do you get this complex coding idea across? And he did that in 1973, after he had gotten, and if you go back of how all this works, where we came from, they developed Unix at Bell Labs, but AT&T couldn't sell anything. They were a monopoly, they were regulated. So they leaked out the code to Berkeley and all these other universities, and they all started making their own releases of this stuff. And when they ran into copyrights and stuff, they'd find a way around it. So when you think about us, where we are now, where all these LLMs have all this source code sucked into them, and I could use Cursor to just write this whole presentation. It's really cool. So the first, oh, wait. Did I, oh, okay. So yeah, I skipped that. So when I was going through these books, I found the programming book that I took a computer science class, that Unix programming, that was in Wayne's World, where I was taking a class, and that Wayne's girlfriend has a Unix book. It's like, dude, I'm working on that. And I can remember taking that class, I can remember talking to the sysadmins, and it's autographed by the author. Yeah, W. Richard Stevens was cool. he just vanished. If you go research about him, it's very strange, but very good book. And what was I going to say? Anyway, Wayne's girlfriend had the book, and that's what I was doing in that class. I asked Bruce Curtis at NDSU, what is that default router? And then ever since then, I've just been into computer networking junkie. So, okay, let's go back to Ken Thompson. This is cool. It's a cool way to start and just to talk about how objects work and how you can group a concept and put everything into one. And I'm going to use Ghosty as the editor. And I have this directory. You'll see it if you check out or clone the Git repo. I have these different 00 and 01 for the different acts that are in here. And then I have a bunch of the supporting Python in this, not in that thing. In here. So I have this Thompson one. Whoop. This is one of those things that you do before and everything works, right? So here's a super simple where, hey, I want to just do a super simple, just like that original Hello World program. I want to do the same thing. And I want to learn how objects work. So this is the code that we're going to use, but I'm going to run it live. We're going to cat this into, so when you copy and paste into REPL, it can't have any blank lines in it, so it looks like this. So I'm going to put that into the PB copy, and then I'm going to, so I'm right inside the REPL here, and I'm going to paste that as is. So there, it does this. Let's look at this, what it is. So this is a class that's defined in main, because that's, main is the dunder main is the root of the whole Python programming structure. And that's where the class is, because we pasted it into that buffer. And if we were to go back and look at some of these where this, like this greet, this is the object being created. And it's essentially, it's autonomous. Nothing's gonna save that value. And here's the greet. Here's the method that's running. So up here is the whole definition of this. This dunder init creates the object, and by default, like here in this greet, it says, well, put this value's name, and it defaults in just how Python is defined in the programming language. It takes this parameter and uses world as a default. And then it does with the greet. That's how that's initted. So this part here is calling the init. And in this instance, it's actually defining Piowa as the person saying hello Piowa, and not hello world. See how the output is. Any questions yet? All right. So I hope this is as easy as Ken Thompson's, where it's just simple. And object-oriented is very, because if you don't understand it at first, it's just a weird, why would you ever want objects in your functional programming? And it's just a way of collecting all the pieces together. So one more thing as we're going to go, keeping it simple, but at the same time doing a little education. I love the Python debugger. So Act 0 here, we've written another class here called maybe break. So what this is doing, so maybe break. We're going to get an instance of this class at the beginning of our program and call it MB. And then when MB gets called, if this environment variable is set to 1, true, or yes, it's going to put a breakpoint right there. So we can run, and then let's go through that. Once we're in the debugger, we'll want to print out values. We can print with a P. there's the idea of you're in your call stacks, so you're down inside of the method that's getting called as a function. We're down inside that when this breakpoint gets hit, we're going to be down inside of this call function, so we're going to have to back up. And then the list is to list where we're at, and W is to say, where am I? Where am I? So let's go to the next one here, and let's go through building an objects. And it's one of my favorite things, was the built-in object of dict that we all use all the time, where you just have a dictionary name and a key value pair. It's all over in Python. That's what we're going to use for the basic start. So let's go look at 001. 01. Oh, it uses this. So it has the idea of attendee, and here's the dict where it just works as a dictionary. It doesn't do anything fancy, except you can have any instance of it where you just put square brackets around it and add a key to it. And then it does a fancy thing where it registers it, and it takes the name, or there's a seat number. The seat is regarding the attendee. I guess this is a little bit, I had a lot of other stuff to do today besides this. But okay, so let's run that and let's get into the debugger. So I use the head command a lot on the command line. It's awesome. So that's going to print out just the 10 lines of the, oh, and this is the wrong one. I want to be using, you want the 01 is, so as the slides go by, as this act go by, this file lines up 01. And I'm going to run with this, just like that maybe debug, or maybe break. So there, I'm in the debugger. So now let's do a W. Where am I? So I am inside of this call. That is that maybe break. That's that function we were showing earlier. So then we need to go up to where line 25 in this main, we want to be up there. So we just went up, and you can go down and back and forth. And here LL is just like the long list on when you're in the file system looking at files. And then this just instantiated an attendee called Carol. See how this is seat general admission, and here's a roster. And I can take roster, because it's a dictionary, and just put foo. And then print that again. And it's just adding that. And then if we're done using the debugger, we want to just continue, let's run the program the way it would naturally finish. So then it prints this, and notice we have this bar in here. And that's part of our debugging. We've added it to we were in the middle of the structure of the code running, and we added an extra value in there. Okay. Oh, here I'm talking about messing around with the dictionary, and I already did that. Object building. Oh, we did. What is this user group again? Oh, and this, let's just run this without, because I'm looking at the time here. This builds that. I lost that after the less changes the TTY run. I guess it just it creates a generic user group with that same object that we used before. Let's kind of cruise along here, because inheritance. So inheritance is what it's called when I'm using the dict as the class that gets inherited. And they call it superclass. There's all kinds of weird things that get inherited, or this vocabulary gets all kinds of weirdness about it. But inheritance is just the thing you're taking its defined methods and using all the stuff like dictionary there. It would print it out just like a normal dictionary. And then REPL, you can redefine REPL so it can do things for you, like print things out. And here I'm starting to get close to the pizza part. So sometimes it's more fun to just run code than to look at it. And here, so in here the REPL is printing this out. The repr, not REPL. REPL is the interactive. Repr is the method that prints out the object. Here is the object it's printing out that event, the Python users group. And this is the function that is actually getting called. Notice I called it a function. It's a method, but it's a function. Okay, still good on 1 minute of time left. Debugger. Is that right? 1 minute of time left or so? Okay, one thing I wanted to do is make sure you can show how the inner workings of Python work. So you could do operator overloading. So in here, we can start goofing around with the number of diners. So I didn't change this one, I changed another one earlier. But so if there's 4 diners and there's 1 pepperoni pizza with 8 slices, I don't know why it has PDB there. But anyway, it does this divide by 4. That's what the code is. And then it prints out each of these slices to where they go. So then we get one last one. 05 is the pizza one. And I did this one before, but there was only 7 people in here when but this is the inventory of pizza over there. There's a sausage, 2 pepperoni, cheese, and a veggie. And so if there were 7 diners, each one would get a sausage laid, a pepperoni slice. And it does 2 pepperonis. Like it's just programming, it doesn't know. And in each of these, there's a debug. So here we can go and debug and play around in here until Matt says, hey, you've got enough done here. So here we are inside. So we're in the maybe break, we're in the call method. Oh yeah, so that's a really neat piece of it too. So MB is, you're calling the object. So that, let's go back down. You're calling the object. So these dunder call, that's one of these magic methods that are built into Python that automatically calls that. So you never have to call that method directly. The syntax of the language just does that for you. And if we go back up, it uses list comprehension to edit, and it uses the divide to divide the pizzas by the number of diners. And I haven't showed that, have I? So it used data classes here. I told it to not do that. I put it back in there. So somewhere in my cursor configuration, someplace it tells it to do that somewhere. But this is, so to use this divide sign with this pepperoni pizza object, you can define this true div. And this is used in places where they want to use it for the syntax, so they put ///. And they use that in places, especially when you're...
Hey, can I interrupt for a second? Just real quick. Does someone have a beige Toyota Camry in the parking lot? I think you need to move your car. They're trying to paint some of the lines. Okay, thank you. Carry on.
I've never heard that at a meetup before. Okay, so then this is that true dev, and that's one of these magic methods too. You can't change that, but you can get the syntax of the Python interpreter to call it when it sees this divide sign. It's like, oh, this object, I know how to do that with this. I'm going to call this function. So then it prints out the diners must be positive, and we could go through all these different, logic paths that this thing has defined in it. But that's it here. Any questions? Inspect, slice. We could show that list. If there's a couple seconds left, I can show that list of. So here we're going to drop into the maybe debug again. So here we're in the maybe debug, go up. And then here's the pizzas. Here's all those pizzas. So this is, this is just a standard, nothing fancy going on. This is just a list being defined, and each one of these objects is being instantiated right there. So then this does that, and the print does a for loop of this list, and then it calls that REPL of the inside of the pizza. This is an alias I have. Print. Oh, I had that defined earlier. That's how I print out the code inside here. But see, when I print out a pizza object, it calls this thing right there. All right. No questions? Good to go? Perfect. Thanks a lot.
All right, we're going to shuffle speakers here, so give us 1 second.
Test, test. Sweet. Hi, I'm Mike. Today I was going to talk to you all about Textual-cogs, a library that I created a little over a year ago. So let's start with what is textual. So textual is a TUI package for Python. TUI stands for text-based user interface. This is an example of a TUI called posting that I did not create. Basically, what Textual allows you to do is to create a graphical user interface in your terminal, and it's cross-platform, and it can also be turned into a web app if you want to. It allows you to create buttons, widgets, labels, pretty much anything you would normally see in like a regular GUI. Now, there are some widgets it doesn't replicate, but you can get a pretty good, complicated, and quick UI using Textual. So I come from using DevOps Python. That was like my favorite GUI package in Python. And it is also cross-platform, and it uses native widgets. But it also comes with a bunch of built-in dialogues that Textual doesn't have. So I created Textual-cogs, and I started creating all these different little dialogues that I could use that mimicked some of the stuff that I used to have in WX Python. And I was hoping that eventually I'd get around to writing some cool like custom widgets to also include in there as well. So for example, there's one that's not in here yet, but I've been working on an FTP 2E. And in the process of creating that, I was like, I need something that kind of does what this is showing right here, but it uses FTP commands or SFTP commands instead of your usual file information. And so I did some vibe coding and got that to work with SFTP. And so I do have a what do you want to call it, a widget, basically an SFTP tree widget that I'm planning to include in this eventually once it's a little more polished. But anyway, this is kind of what the idea is. It taught me a lot about how to create packages in Python, so that was fun. I got to learn how to use UV, which lets you do packaging really nicely. And yeah, that's kind of what that is. Just to do a quick demo, show a quick demo. I mean, that was the demo before, but this is how you'd insert it into the code. So normally when you create a textual application, you create an app, and then in the on mount, you'd mount to various widgets. I'm cheating a little bit here because I needed to keep the code short. So normally you'd have like a button, and you'd catch the button's click, and that's where you do the push screen to show you widgets or show your dialogues. I'm just cheating here so that when you load this app, it'll immediately show the dialogue with my message, icon, and title. And then you can set up a callback. So that's basically how it works. That's what I was going to cover in this particular one. I can of course demo it or show you other WX, or not WX, textual type stuff. But if you have any questions about that, that's cool. Otherwise, I actually have a second talk I can give because we're waiting on someone. So it's up to Matt though. Or if you guys have questions. Any questions about how any of this stuff?
I'll just throw out, when you are building something like that, brand new, and putting it in, and like you mentioned, you also realize you have a need for something else along the way. Like, how do you keep yourself contained and not just go down 50 rabbit holes? Like, I should build this too. I'm going to build this. Like, do you totally map it out in advance and be like, I'm sticking to this, or do you just like go with your gut the whole way and just try to get it done?
Well, for me, I'd actually written about the dialogues in WX Python for my blog, so I had kind of a list of the ones that I liked the most. And so I just went through that list and implemented each one and added them one by one, and then created releases based around, one or two or a handful of the dialogues until I got up to a certain point. There's still some more I'd like to add to it, but it has most of the basic ones that I liked the most. There's some people who've created some really neat menus, like the file. You don't normally have file help menu type system in a terminal, although there are some really cool old ones from the MS-DOS days that I have seen. And some people have created some, and I think that'd be fun to have a reusable one that people could just import, because right now the ones that they have, they're like embedded in their own specific apps. They're not like something you can just install. So I'd like to create something like that to add to this as well. That's like on my to-do list. Anyway. Any other comments or questions? Yes?
One thing that I feel like I've sort of fallen into coding sort of by accident. Like that was never really my intent in my career. And so then I very quickly realized that like people who like grew up coding or like have done it for decades or whatever, often have a very strong preference for like using a command line and being able to like type everything, right? And then as soon as they see you using an interface for something, they're like, oh, you don't know how this works. You're clearly, like, there's buttons, you don't know what you're doing, right? And I'm like, well, no, it's like software. Like it came on the plate. That's what I needed to do. I'm not sure what you're complaining about, right? Like
Yeah.
is that in the era that we're in now, which I mean, I don't know how that is all affecting like the AI era, right? But like, is there still a strong preference to like, we're going to do everything on the command line?
I think
coding
that's,
system, or
I feel like that's kind of a split. I still know a lot of people, especially people who do Linux more than Windows, they're still very much CLI driven. And I think the LLM AI stuff is actually bringing a lot of people back to using the command line, because a lot of them are providing command line agents or tooling around it. And in fact, the guy who created Textual created a tool called Toad that uses the ACP protocol so that he has a TUI wrapping around any of the AI tools like Claude and Codex and whatnot. It can wrap all of those as long as it supports the ACP protocol. And now you can run it in a nice UI. And I guess his UI is better than what the OpenAI has created, or it's like Claude and Grok. His is just a little bit nicer so far, which is kind of funny because he's open. His is open source. I think he actually has some funding from Mistral now to continue working on it, as well as Textual. Anyway.
I think that shows the politics inside of some of these corporate
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised at that too, though, with all the AI stuff they talk about. There's a lot of talk about running on the CLI, and then one thing I think, though, is happening is senior engineers building the super complicated AI stuff, and the CLI is what they know, and
Yep.
their peers were probably, grew up on that or whatever, so I think they're all just like, this for us is the fastest way to knock this out and be clean about it, and we don't need to pretty it up for the standard consumer right now, because we're all advanced anyway. So I feel like that's what's happening a little bit. Because I was real surprised. I'm like, yeah, but we can just type anything because you don't need a CLI, but yet they are. There's slash and stuff, and using all sorts of shorthand. And I'm like,
I think that's an automation thing, though, too. It's a lot harder to wrap a GUI than it is to wrap a CLI interface. And so you can automate that a lot better, especially if you're dealing with AWS or Google Cloud or something.
I had a question about, you mentioned you built this as a Python package using UV.
Yes.
Have you built Python packages in the past without UV, and how is your experience different with UV versus without?
Well, I think I started working on this using the old tooling. I was like, I should just learn UV. Everyone's talking about it. So I switched in the middle. The biggest difference is that UV is a lot faster. It has better commands, in my opinion. It has really good documentation about how to set it up with the pyproject.toml file. And you can just run the app locally to make sure that your changes are working right before you push it to PyPy or the Python packaging index. And I really liked that ability to just iterate locally really quickly and be like, oh, I broke it. I don't want to push that, and then fix it and basically rebuild it really quickly and then be able to push it up. I think technically I'm using that, I can't remember what it's called now. It's like Twill or something. There's a tooling thing. If you look on the Python packaging index documentation, they have a tool that they recommend for uploading. So I don't think I used UV to upload. I used that other tool, but I think UV supports uploading too. I just happened to do it the old school way because I was following their documentation, the official documentation. Any other questions?
All right. Thanks, Mike. And you've got one more topic for us, right?
Yes, I do.
All right, let's see it.
Okay. So I also decided, we didn't have a lot of speakers today, so I wanted to talk about Python type hinting tooling. This will be a quickie, but in some ways has more to it than more meat on it. All right, so let's first talk about what are type hints. Most of you probably know already, but a type hint is a way to tell Python that a variable or an argument is a specific type, so like an integer, string, dictionary, whatever. In this example, we have two arguments, A and B. They're both type hinted as integers. And the return type, which is this funny little arrow, also says it's an integer. You can make this really complicated by using the typing module and having it type hints, like a decorator or a generator. You can create generics. You can create aliases. Sometimes it makes your code really ugly. Sometimes it looks really nice. In general, it's very useful for teaching your IDE, like PyCharm or VS Code, how your code works. And then your IDE will help you see that you've made a mistake. That's where I find it helpful, is especially with like UIs that don't have good type hinting. If you're adding the type hinting for it while you're typing out like my textual stuff, it'll catch you doing something dumb really quickly. So that's what I like it for. Now let's talk about the type checkers. There's actually quite a few now. MyPy came out. That was the first one. It was made by Dropbox, interestingly enough. Pyrite came out a few years later by Microsoft. And Pyrite is basically only built to be used in VS Code. I don't think you can run it on the command line, or at least there's not a lot of options for that. The documentation doesn't really talk about that at all. So I've never really used that one because I don't use VS Code that much. I mostly use PyCharm and Wing IDE. And then you've got Ty, which came out, I want to say in 2025. And that's actually kind of interesting because all three of these ones on the bottom all came out in 2025. They're all written in Rust, and they're all super fast. So Ty was written by Astral, the people behind Rough. Firefly is by Meta, the Facebook company. And then Zuban is made by some guy named David Halter. I don't really know who this is, but I guess Jedi is a popular project. So he's the one who did that one. I feel like that one's really new. At least it doesn't have a lot of information about it. But I went ahead and looked up, just for curiosity's sake, when were these made? MyPy's initial public release is 2014, so it's over 10 years old. Kind of makes sense, because I think it was Python 3.5 that first added the ability to add type hints, and that was around that time frame. PyFreight, Microsoft didn't join the party for 5 years, basically. And then, of course, you have the three all doing it in the later year part of the 2025. Firefly actually came out with their stable version just last week. And what I liked about it is they provided this really cool link to this type checking benchmarks page. If you scroll down, and this is actually how I found out about Zuban, is that it'll show you, the average execution time for these things. Pyrite is a dog compared to any of the other ones. MyPy is a little bit better. And then you've got the three Rust ones here on the bottom. And where I think Zuban actually beats the other ones is in memory. Because if you look at them, Zuban always has less memory, sometimes like 50% less. It's not the fastest. Ty is still the fastest. But Firefly is really close in speed compared to Ty. I've actually played a little bit with Firefly for a book I'm working on, but I haven't tried Zuban at all yet. Anyway, you can kind of go to this website, python-type-checking.com, and it has a nice 10 slowest packages and shows all the benchmarks for these different packages, so you can kind of get an idea, is this the one for me? I do want to mention, let's go back to my slide if I can. This one. Let's go back to these. The cool thing I liked about Firefly is it comes with tooling that none of the other ones have. It has a type inference tool, so you can use it to basically automatically type untyped code. It has a tool to help migrate from like MyPy. So if you have your code already done in MyPy and you want to migrate to Firefly, it has an automation tool for that. And it also has a type coverage tool. So you can just run it against your code base and see how much of it is covered with type checking. Zuban, on the other hand, covers, I believe, 95% of the MyPy test framework. So it passes 95% plus of their tests. And Firefly doesn't say what it covers. It also has a mode, so it can take all the same configuration and command line arguments as MyPy. And it also has a mode to do that with Pyrite as well. So it can basically copy both of those, and Firefly doesn't seem to have that. So you got a lot of options right now for which type checker you want to do. All right, well, that's the end of that one. But I thought it was really interesting learning about all these different type checkers. Do we have any questions about type hinting or type checking in Python? Yes, sir.
We're working a big legacy code base. We've got thousands of lines of code. None of it's typed currently.
Yep.
I would like to add type annotations. How do I begin? Do I like pick a couple annotations and put them everywhere? Do I pick a couple files and get them 100%?
So I've done this several times now with large code bases. I started out with MyPy because that was the best supported one when I started out almost 5 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago when I did my first project. That was really the only tool to use at that time. What I found to be useful, and they all do this, is you can tell it, I only want to type check this folder. And so those are the ones you start with. And I found that if I chose the very base classes, so like if your code base has deep ones, those are the ones I like to type check first, because that makes finding the bugs quicker and easier to type check the children, basically. Because the children are going to, when you try to type check the children first, they're going to have all these errors because the MyPy will recursively go down to the base class. And then you're like, dang it, now I got to go type check those too. Or you can go in and add a directive at the top of the file that says basically ignore this file. There's also ways to do it with the config file. You can basically say ignore these directories using a regular expression. And I know Firefly does that too. I haven't played with Zuban. Ty definitely does that as well. You just have to look and dig. I did forget to mention, I noticed that Ty doesn't enforce missing type hints, which I think is weird. MyPy does. So to get that to work, you can actually add I think it's called the ANN, it's a Flake 8 annotations plugin that Rough actually supplies. So you set that in the Rough config settings, and it'll warn you that you're not adding type hints. So as long as you're using Rough and Ty, the whole Astral thing, you'll have no problem with that. Anyway, that was an aside. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any other questions about this topic?
When you were on that project, what do you use for backup to? Was it all on a Git repo or to make sure when you were starting to add the typing?
Oh, yes. So if you want to run these, I recommend using pre-commit. It'll work for Ty pretty well. It mostly works for MyPy. MyPy's a little more finicky because you sometimes have to install more dependencies with MyPy, I've found. I don't know why. It's a little more tricky with that one. Or you can create a GitHub action. I've done both. If you put a GitHub action in, it can run MyPy against your code base on your PR. And I find that really helpful. And that helps your team also to yo, you messed this up. You didn't put your type hints in. Go fix it because the PR is now blocked, I don't think Ty has an official pre-commit plugin right now. You have to use a third party. But MyPy officially supports pre-commit, for example. Other questions, comments? I don't know why this keeps going black on me.
I think the cable is a little loose.
I don't know. It's plugged in as far as I can see. Okay. Well, that's it. That's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I think that's all we've got tonight. Feel free to stick around. We've got more pizza and drinks. And, yeah, hopefully we'll see you next month.